Looking ahead to 2026, we got an interesting question last week. Do you think that this Canadian team is built deep enough for a deep run at the World Cup in June? And a follow-up on that, what do you think Canada is truly set up to have success at next year, Brendan, when the World Cup rolls around?
2022 was the perfect example or sample, if you will, that I should say 2022 was the defining moment, really, that it all matters who's in your group. Because we all looked at that before Canada kicked off against Belgium and thought, look, there's a possibility they get out of this group. On 4 points could be enough. And I said they're either going to get 4 points or they're going to get 0 points. And they ended up getting 0. Now, I don't think anyone's under the illusion that if they had won that Belgium game that they would have been semifinalists like Morocco or Croatia. But so much comes down to the group. Based off of strength, and the fact that this is an expanded tournament, you're going to have teams that are weaker than them. They're likely going to start next summer, 2026, within the top 25 FIFA rankings. They might be 25th, maybe they'll be 23rd, but they will be better, higher ranked, and that they will be a better team next summer than they are right now. I think the expectation has to be to reach the knockout rounds. I do think quarterfinals would be in reach, like we've seen, teams kind of catch lightning in a bottle. But again, it all depends on the pathway. I think last 16 should probably be the expectation and the hope, but it really comes down to who you have to play against. I mean, the way that Jesse Marsch has elevated this team over the last 18 months since he's been in charge, I feel confident in saying this is definitely a team that should be in the knockout stage. That was not the case before he was hired, and that wasn't the case before Herdman left there in the Nations League, where it seemed like they had a real chance to win that tournament in Las Vegas, and they didn't. This team is much better than that, so I feel confident saying that expectation should be knockout stages, but it really depends on who's in their way, Alex.
Yeah, but I think that's why this discussion, I think, is a lot more multi-layered, and something to look at is this isn't your uncle's World Cup of 32 teams, 16 get out. Like third place teams are going to get out. There's going to be a wider breadth of teams with the 48 team World Cup. I don't think it's going to be as poor as some people joke, like, oh, there's 48 teams, there's going to be, some bummy team. No, the teams are still going to be 48 good teams. But I think the third place thing really changes, because we've seen it at the Euros in particular, how much it's changed since they went from, that 16 team tournament to that 24 team with the extra bodies getting out. It changes. You can have Portugal winning an entire tournament and they didn't win a group stage game, right? As So I think that's interesting, because this Canadian team under Jesse Marsch, they've changed their floor completely. Like, I think they've always had a high ceiling, even when the John Herdman era. And I think that's what was so frustrating about 22, is that they had a high ceiling. So there's almost this optimism of, you know what? They can go make something happen. They've got these young players. They can surprise a Belgium. They can upset a Croatia. And I think we saw it in glimpses, right? Like, you see the way they played against Belgium. You saw the way they started against Croatia, even against Morocco. Like, they had a good, they weren't embarrassed by a team that went on to go into the semifinals, but then the floor kind of is where it hurt them, right? Goalkeeping errors, defensive mistakes, the midfield getting overrun. And you look at this team now, it feels like they've upgraded a lot of those areas. Like, all of a sudden, last World Cup, we're looking at anyone with a Canadian passport and could play center back. Should this guy be in the national team? And all of a sudden now you got a couple class center backs that look, okay, Moise Bombito. I think a lot of national teams would love a Moise Bombito, to have a young, speedy center back who can be the rock of a back line. A lot of those positions are different. So I think that's what's most interesting about this World Cup is, as you can see, tournament football is so volatile. Like, I don't think the Canadian team that lost to Guatemala and the Canadian team that reached the semifinals of the Copa America were all that different. You can argue they played better in the Gold Cup group stages, versus, because like the Copa America group stage, they just kind of grinded their way out. But then all of a sudden you reach a knockout game and everything changes. But I feel like under Jesse Marsch, they've gotten rid of a lot more of that margin for error, although there's still a lot more to come, because we saw it against Guatemala, we saw it against Mexico at the Nations League. They're still figuring out that side, but I think getting through group stages at least seems to be something they're good at. It's really figuring out the knockout games is their next step.
Yeah, I would have them winning 2 knockout games as my complete, dream match, dream World Cup for Canada. But in terms of expectations, I think round of 16, they can win a knockout game. They can win a round of 32 and then eliminated in the round of 16. And one hopes that they can win the group as well and play those games both in Vancouver, because of course, if they top the group, they would play up to 4 matches in Vancouver after opening the tournament in Toronto.